play a little bit from Professor Dave. We'll get your response, Kent, and then we will start bringing people in and having some fun. So here we go. I'm going to mute. We'll just play a little bit of Professor Dave, and then we'll allow Dr. Dino to respond.
Here we go. Let's begin by stating that evolution by natural selection is an observable fact. Expose some bacteria to antibiotics, chance mutations lead to resistant ones, the rest die, and soon they're all descended from the resistant ones. That's evolution by natural selection. Speciation.
Yeah, please stop it about every 3 seconds so I can make some comments, okay?
One at a time. Go ahead, Kent.
For him to just make that blanket statement and just move right on, this is how they bamboozle their students. Wow, the teacher said it's a fact. Natural selection, listen to me, Dave, selects. It doesn't create anything. It selects. I can go through our shop and pick out all the screws. I selected all the screws, okay? A farmer can go through his herd of cows and select the ones that give more milk, and they'll only breed them next time. And eventually you get a cow that gives 185 pounds of milk a day. That's now the world record, I believe. It's utterly ridiculous. So it's still a cow. It's still giving milk. See, there's natural selection where nature decides that one won't survive. And there's artificial selection where a human being survives or selects the one. Either way, it's a selection process. It's not creating anything. Natural selection, if you take an antibiotic and it kills 99% of the bad guys, the 1% get to survive and go make the next generation. It didn't change it to anything else. That process won't change a bacteria to a whale. They just, I don't know how to get them to see it. It selects. It doesn't create anything. So natural selection is an observable fact. If you turned all the dogs in the world loose in Alaska, only the ones with long hair, thick fur, you know, big, dense body instead of skinny body to hold the heat better, it's a surface area to volume ratio problem, they would survive. My wife's pug wouldn't go 3 minutes up there. The squirrels would eat it, okay? So nature will select some to not make it. It's still a dog, and it's all it's ever going to be. They think it's a creative process. No, Dave, it's a selection process that keeps the species strong. It doesn't create anything. Go ahead.
Well said. It's a fine-tuning mechanism that keeps a species as strong as it can be. It's not adding anything. It's survival of the fittest, not arrival of the fittest.
Right.
Okay, let's go on to the next point. See, it's nice when you can mute him, or you can pause it, right, Kent? And then go one point at a time with Dave. Okay, here we go. Next point.
Or the production of new biological species is also an observable fact. We have observed the emergence of new species of microorganisms, plants, and animals. We know so much about it that we have terminology to describe the different kinds of speciation that can occur. If you understand biochemistry, none of this is surprising at all. DNA undergoes.
Okay. Who is defining when something becomes a new species? Are a dog and a wolf a different species? Yeah. Are they still capable of interbreeding? Yeah. Does that prove they're related to pine trees? No. God said they bring forth after their kind. He didn't use the word species. I don't think the animals care how we classify them. They don't care at all. They know to look for their own kind. Every plant does that. Take the pollen from a pine tree and sprinkle it on an oak tree. Nothing will happen. So speciation, the word is what's confusing. They're still the same kind of animal. Nobody's ever observed any of these speciation events like the fruit fly becoming anything other than a fly. They spent thousands of dollars in the laboratory on them poor flies, nuking them, microwaving them, x-raying them, trying to make them make mutated babies. And they succeeded. They got flies with no wings. What do you call that, a crawl? They got flies with curled wings, can't fly at all. They got all kinds of mutations. They never got anything but a fly, and they never got any improvement. All they're doing is wasting tax dollars on dumb experiments to try to prove their religion. Evolution is a religion. So natural selection is not going to create anything. It selects. And speciation, the farmers get all excited. Wow, I created there are now 400 breeds of cows. You want to use the word breed or variety or species or kind, it's still a cow. Still a cow. They've never seen anything go outside what any 4-year-old would consider a new kind of animal. None. So Dave is dreaming. Go ahead.
Dave hopes, dreams, and imagines that he's related to a pine tree, Kent. I wrote a book, great points, called Special Creation. Matt and I did a lot of work on these so-called speciation events. And we discovered that, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, the majority of the time that these new variations arise, it's due to a reduction in genetic variability. It's not adding anything. We don't see uphill changes. It's all what I would call horizontal changes within the genomes. Matt, if you could touch on that briefly.
Yeah, matter of fact, as long as the species is alive today and we can test it, I think that would be a great indicator for how we could determine what animal kind was on the ark. Because if we only see chromosome fusions and genetic decay, then theoretically we should be able to go backwards in time and look at the animals that have the highest amount of chromosomes and say, look, that animal was probably on the ark. Now, if that species had gone extinct, obviously we couldn't know that. But if we look at all the different animal kinds that are out there and we keep seeing genetic loss, gene loss, mutation affecting a creature, then sure, we can go backwards in time and we see superiority of animals. That's not what evolution is supposed to be doing, right? We're supposed to be moving in this linear pattern like a tree from the root of a primitive common ancestor and branching up. Well, we don't see that anymore. So what do? They say, well, that type of evolution isn't happening anymore. We're on the tips of the nodes of branches. We're seeing exactly what you creationists are talking about, but it doesn't mean that the other didn't happen a long time ago. So the kind of faith based on that, right? So what we see is, chromosome fusions, genetic loss, chromosomes getting smaller, the genome getting smaller. So I say just go backwards in time. We can trace those kind right to the ark, and I've done it with a couple. But.
So basically, you're basically saying that species over time hit walls. If we're going to say all of your domestic dogs, Ken, if you would agree, go back to a common canid or wolf-like ancestor. Well, a wolf-like ancestor to a Chihuahua, I mean, that is a reduction in many ways. That is not improvement. You put all the Chihuahuas back into the wild, Ken, you've pointed out that they probably wouldn't last a week. They'd get eaten by the squirrels.
Right. And they're still a dog. And there's a limit. They've been trying to get smaller dogs. Let's say they got down to the toy Chihuahua. Do you think they'll ever get a dog as small as a flea? There are life forms as small as a flea, like a flea.
Right.
Is there a limit to the dog variations? They got now the big Mastiff dog, the huge dog. Do you think you'll ever get a dog as big as an elephant? No. They don't admit this. Yes, you get varieties, but there's a limit. They don't like that at all. They think because we see 400 breeds of cows, therefore cows are related to pine trees.
Right.
It seems like you could have. It seems like you could still have two creatures that derive from the same genetic created gene pool, but maybe now that we're further down the line, they might not be sexually compatible. Maybe they've been separated and something has lost something where now it's no longer separated. But yeah, it doesn't mean that it didn't derive from the same created gene pool.
Right. Okay. Good points, gentlemen. Appreciate it. We'll go, let's say one more point. Looks like, quote unquote, Professor Dave is going to touch on mutations. We'll give Kent the opportunity to respond, and then we'll start bringing people in. And to notify the live audience, if you do have questions, but you don't want to join the stream, tag me. I'll save them. If we get a chance, we'll get to them. Also, the link is posted. And so click the link. I will vet you backstage. If I don't know who you are, I'll just ask for a little bit of information before I bring you in. And then we'll have some fun. So here we go. I am going to share screen again. We'll go to Professor Dave's next argument. So far, he's 0 for 2. And so let's see if he's 1 for 3.
Goes mutation. New genes means the expression of new proteins with the potential for novel functionality and eventually completely different organisms. This happens faster than one might think. Even a single point mutation can produce legs where antennae should be, additional sets of wings, and other remarkable changes. Kent will respond by saying that these are never different kinds of organisms. Well, what is a kind? This word is in the Bible, but it's incredibly vague. We can read about cattle.
Let's stop there. He's basically pointing to Kent, as you can tell, he's saying, well, we've got mutation. So we have natural selection that acts upon that which exists, the genetic variation that exists, but mutations, they'll add the necessary genetic variation for selection to act on to basically have evolution taking place.
Okay, a mutation might be similar to if you're typing in, say, a Word document and you have a typographical error, you make a mistake. Oh, or you transpose two words. Like, please throw grandma down the stairs her hat. What exactly does that mean? We throw grandma down the stairs or we throw the hat down the stairs? So you could cut and paste and mix up words, okay, and mix up sentences. Mutations is a scrambling, listen to me, Dave, it's a scrambling of already existing information. It's not creating new information. Show me a mutation that made something beneficial that added new information. There are lots of mutations. Nobody argues about that. All of them are harmful, fatal, or neutral. They do nothing. We got a couple of ducks I feed a couple times a day when I give my tours here. They got feathers growing out of the side of their head. It's a mutation. The bones of the head didn't grow together right, so they're mutated. They're still a duck, and they're still stupid like the rest of them, but it's not helpful. Nobody's seen a good mutation. Somebody said sickle cell anemia. Oh, that you call that a good mutation? They say, yeah, you can't get malaria if you got sickle cell. Oh, you cut off your feet, you can't get athlete's foot either. Is that a good mutation? All they are, mutations is a scrambling of already existing code. That's all it is. That code is more complex than the space shuttle. You know, we use a 2-digit Morse code, you know, dots and dashes. DNA uses a 4-digit code, you know, the CATG. You can write 1 trillion times more complexity with those codes, and they have. That's what all the different plants and animals are made from. And again, if we didn't have some similarities, we could only eat each other. How is it you can eat the meat from the brown cow and digest it? There's similarities. Their protein is similar enough, you can digest it, break it down, make it into your protein. Great. That's not evolution. So I'm sorry, Dave, you're wrong. That's not evidence for evolution.
Right, just like the sickle cell anemia example that you brought up, Kent, that is due to a broken protein. It's due to a deformed hemoglobin protein. And so this is, again, a loss. It's functionally compromising overall to the organism. So you're not going to take your fish to fisherman through degradation over time. I don't think, if you could speak to this a little bit, Ken, I don't think Professor Dave realizes that today biological organisms have a very high genetic load. We have been accumulating mutations for thousands of years. Most mutations are deleterious. And so deleterious mutation accumulation, again, is not going to take your single-celled like ancestor into a whale over time. Ken, if you could speak to that briefly.
Yeah, see, they're not adding information. They're scrambling existing information. Like the birds, the different kind of feathers on the birds. They already had a feather. Or like the cow that gives 185 pounds of milk a day. It was already giving milk. It didn't create anything new. It didn't get wings on the cow. All mutations do not produce any kind of evolution. They've known this for 50 years. All it does is scramble existing information. That's all it does. So I'm sorry, Dave, you're wrong again. But Dave thinks he's a strawberry. So, I mean, what do you expect?
Right. Actually, Kent, what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to bring in our first guest. So, Kent, you've got a pretty cool tree of life of all of the evolutionists that you've debated. Professor Dave, who we're talking about now, he believes he's related to
Professor Dave.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, Professor Dave. Where's he at on here? Oh, here he is. Snake was right. There he is. Professor Dave is a strawberry. Snake was right. I said, are you related to a ladybug? He said, oh, yeah. Okay. Tom Jump. I said, are you related to a tomato? Oh, yeah, I'm related to a tomato. Let's see. Ken Rock is related to a turtle. Luca related to a cow. Wade the Wizard related to a snail. I got them all on a chart. I asked him, are you related to this? Ask an atheist, are you related to a buzzard? Oh, yeah. You related to a worm? Oh, yeah. They think they're related to everything. And when I show them that they really believe they all came from a rock, then I say, now, how can you guys in good conscience drive on the highway that's made out of your ancestors, for heaven's sake?
Disrespectful.
Show some respect. Gee whiz. I love it. Go ahead.
Matt, if you were an evolutionist, what would you like to be related to?
Ooh, something that's treated really nice. Maybe his wife's pug. Be carried around everywhere. Just I don't have to walk. They bring me food.
Right, they do everything for you. Yeah.
I guess Kent's pug will work.
What about you, Sam? What do you want to? Yeah, Kent, go ahead.
Matt, you can have the pug. Where do you want me to send it?
Just go missing one day, huh?
Oh yeah,
I'd say something similar. Just lay around, some pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got it made.
Got it made.
Okay.
What's for dinner?
And Kent, sometimes during your debates, you get your evolutionists that are really reluctant to admit that they believe they are related to mosquitoes and walking sticks and fish. But eventually, after enough of the right questions are asked, they will finally admit to the fact that they believe they are. It was Darwin who said, isn't it a fact, or isn't it a reality that all plants and all animals should be related? Well, you've got animals like whales and plants like banana plants and strawberries. And so that's exactly what Darwin is saying. Isn't that right, Kent?
They put them on these family trees. The kids have to learn this for school. This is not science. They think a protozoa turned to a biology teacher and you're related to a jellyfish. They make these trees of life, and all it is a bunch of lines on paper. It's not science. Here they got the humans related to a pine tree. Yep, that's proof right there. They draw these lines. The kids see it in the textbook. Wow, it's got to be true. It's in my textbook. You're a primate. Oh, really? Yeah. This is a brainwashing program that's been going on for 150 years now, and it's time we put a stop to it. If you want to believe you're related to a strawberry, go ahead. Don't teach that as science.
Well, Kent, let me ask you, what if we put more lines on the paper and arrange them in a more sophisticated way? Huh? What about that?
That might make it true. You're right. Let's see.
Right.
The bird and the mouse are related. Who'd have thunk it? Look at that. Wow. This is the stuff they do. It's sad. Go ahead.
Kent, what if we were to, like Sam said, what if we were to make the tree look something more like this? A lot more lines, looks a lot more complicated, a lot more sophisticated. Does that change the fact? Does that mean, okay, maybe we are related to apples?
That's what they do. And it overwhelms the students. They got to memorize all this stuff for the test. One guy called me last week. He said, Brother Hovind, my daughter is, I forget, junior high, I think. The last question on their final exam was, do you believe evolution is the best theory to explain everything? Yes or no? And it was worth 30% of the grade. He said, Brother Hovind, what should I tell my kid? I tell the kids, you should say, the textbook says, but I don't believe it. But this one didn't give that option. It was simple, check yes or check no. What's a student supposed to do? If they check no and the teacher marks it wrong, now they just lost 30 points out of 100. They're going to fail. That's how to weed them out. I said, send me the name of the teacher, the name of the book, a copy of this test. I want to get a lawsuit going on that one. That's somebody pushing their religion at taxpayer expense. That's all it is. Evolution is a religion. Nobody ever sees any of this. None. But they somehow got all of us paying for it. Well, I'm not happy about it.
It's propaganda. You pointed out the question. It's like if I were to ask you, are elephants pink or orange? Well, they're neither. It's a bad question. And I think this all goes back to the creationist model. If by evolution they mean change over time, then sure, my cell phone changes over time, cars change over time, various creatures change over time. Look at all the domestic dogs that we see today. And so if by evolution they mean domestic dogs, wolves, and coyotes are related, then we're probably not going to have a problem, right, Kent? But if by evolution they mean dogs, wolves, banana plants, and flowers are related, then that's where we have an issue.
That's where one of the first things I always do in my debates is I define exactly what do you mean by that word evolution, because it's a slippery word. Are you talking about cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, matter? That's not science. Chemical evolution, stellar, organic, life getting started. That was the Tour debate. That was classic. Macroevolution, where an animal changes to something else. Those first 5 definitions are purely religious. They're not science. Microevolution is a lousy word. We shouldn't use it, but they do. All it means is a variation within the kind. That's all we've ever seen. That one is science. The first 5 are religious. So you got to define what exactly are you talking about? What do you mean by evolution? The word is more slippery than people realize.
Amen. That's why it's important to define terms. So before I bring in my first guest, somebody's pointing out the Tweety bird that you have in your background, Matt. So when you look at those Tweety birds, do you see the relationship that the evolutionists are speaking of? Do you see the similarities? Do you see how that is possibly your cousin, according to them?
I mean, that's
you just said amen. Yeah.
That's a Tyrannosaurus for sure. I could say, I could see the similarity. He definitely weighed about 30 tons in the past. There's no doubt.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, well, we just had 30 minutes of fun. Kent, we're good. So Professor Dave was 0 for 3. Kent, we'll have to do sometime soon, hopefully sooner rather than later. We'll go into the next 3 points, and we'll show why Professor Dave is probably, I'm predicting, 0 for 6.